We're learning. There's a lot going on. We haven't had a program since 2019 in the library for adults. So this is a very exciting and complicated moment, and we're thankful for your patience. And thank you to everyone on Zoom. We appreciate you coming today. Please keep your microphones muted. You can use the chat if you want to say anything. We're going to be taking questions at the end after Sally and Matoaka have spoken. Yeah, without further ado, here's our program on the Indian residential schools. From the 1800s through half of the 1900s, hundreds of thousands of Native American children were forced to go to Indian boarding schools in the United States and Canada. Upon arrival at the schools, their children's hair was cut and their native clothing taken away from them. Children were not allowed to speak in their native languages. Many children died from diseases and malnutrition at the boarding schools. Some died running away from the schools and trying to find their way home. The purpose of Indian residential schools was to purge children of their languages, their culture, and their family and tribal connections, and to make them into compliant workers at the bottom of the American social economic system. So our speakers for this evening, Matoaka Little Eagle is a native dancer, storyteller, and educator of Tewa Apache. Tewa. Would you like to introduce yourself?
No.
Tewa Apache and Chickahominy descent. Throughout her lifetime, she has introduced the public and thousands of students to diverse Native cultures in America in her goal of dispelling stereotypes and promoting respect, tolerance, and celebration of the gifts and cultural understanding that we may share. Sally Bermanzohn is a lifelong activist for racial justice and women's equality. She was present at the Greensboro Massacre in 1979 when the Ku Klux Klan attacked demonstrators and killed 5 people. Sally earned a PhD from CUNY and taught at Brooklyn College for 20 years. She wrote Through Survivors' Eyes from the 60s to the Greensboro Massacre. Sally is a part of Nita P-Top, My Friends, Your Friends in Algonquin, a group dedicated to Native American practice and teaching. All right, without further ado, Sally and Matoaka.
Hello. We're going to begin tonight with a prayer in Munsee, which is the native language of the people who used to live here and who still live here. And so I want to introduce J.D. Alexander, who's going to do the prayer. And I also want to, his mom is here, Charlene. And Charlene made this beautiful banner called Every Child Matters. This is dedicated to the children whose lives were lost at these Indian boarding schools. So I wanted to thank you very much, Charlene.
You're very welcome.
And JD, I can give you the microphone or I can hold it for you as you, how about I hold it for you? Yes.
Sally.
Oh, okay, shift you to the center. Okay, so this is a prayer in Munsee to begin our program.
Anashik, Kishal Komawang, Alamilian, Yonkwai Kishquik, Mitch Walken, Wallam Liz Walken, Ni Alagomanti, Walk, Ni We Yinkian. Anashik, Kishal Komawang, Alamilian, Coconut Aki, Walk, Kisho, Walk, Ni Pahon, Alo Way Walk, Pat Talk Week, Anashik, Kishal Komoang, Alamiliang, Tyndale, Walk, Mumbi, Aseno, Walk, Cash Home, Meech Walk, Pap Gwalashuk, Meet Hospital, Walk, Ochal Pico, Anashik, Kishal Komoang, Alamiliang, Away Yisa, Walk, Away Wala Shoshuk, Walk, Ni Masuk, Walk, Up Poksa, Anashik, Kishal Komoang, Alamiliang, Ko Homino, Walk, Ko Mo Homsono, Kokona, Walk, Ko Wino, Ni Chinhon, Walk, Ko Hosama, Lapi, Anishi, Alamiliang, Yom Kwai Kishkwi, Walk, Ni Bu Mousa Walkanon, Anashik, 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 Anashik.
Thank you, JD. And I want to say that that was a Muncie giving thanks for the earth, for lives, for the waters and the animals and the plants. And it's a beautiful way that Native people begin many programs, especially what we've learned about people in this area is you begin a program by giving thanks. And so this is dedicated to the children, and thank you very much. I'm the microphone holder.
Thank you, JD, for setting the mood and the mindset for this evening. And what I'd like to do now is I'd like to do a song that is about what that prayer was about. This is a song that my dad, Swift Eagle, used to sing. And it's a rejoicing song, a song that is grateful for all of the elements that come together to bring us life. Like in the Southwest, they say, from the north comes the waters, from the east comes the heat, from the west comes the wind, and from the south comes the plants that nurture all of us. So this is a song that goes to a dance that expresses our gratitude for all of these blessings. Yo ha la la la, hey da do, we do hey yo, we ha yo ha la la, hey da do, we do ya yo ya ho, we do yo. Hey do washu sheda, hey do ki sheda, hey do ka, yaho we do hey de yum. Ya hey de, ya hey de, ya hey de, ya hey. Hey do ka, Yahoo.
yo hey hey Yahweh do hey yo hey do washo sheda hey do ki sheda hey do hey do Yahweh do hey de yo yo hey hey de yo hey hey de yo hey hey yo hey do hey do hey do Yahweh do hey de yo.
Thank you, Creator. Thanks for all of us coming together.
Thank you, Matoaka. So now I'm just going to give a talk, and this is going to be challenging to hold the microphone and.
Do you want me to hold the microphone?
Yeah, you want to do that?
Wow.
Okay, so is this loud enough, or can people hear it?
There is one. Do you mind? There's one complaint that the light is bad. Do you mind if we take a 2-second?
Sure.
If you want to hold the laptop. Thank you.
It's just great to be here after all this time.
That's what we got.
Missing. Nice to be inside this building. Okay, now we can, so everything, the sound's okay, that's, okay. All right, so boarding schools in the United States. The purpose of the Indian boarding schools in this country was to kill the Indian to save the child. The historical context was that Europeans were spreading across this land, and as they did, the indigenous people who had lived here since time immemorial fought to defend their homelands. From the 1600s through the 1800s, there were many battles, many wars. In 1819, the US passed the Civilization Fund Act, which along with other laws established Indian boarding schools. Their purpose was to bring the habits and arts of civilization to Indian children by removing children from their homes and sending them far away to residential schools to assimilate into American culture. After the Civil War, the US military fought Indian wars against the Western indigenous people to seize those Indian lands for American settlers. George Armstrong Custer, the general, who led many battles, declared the only good Indian is a dead Indian. Army Lieutenant Richard H. Pratt fought in the Indian Wars. And then he developed a new model of Indian school called Indian Industrial Boarding Schools. Pratt said, quote, "In a sense, I agree with General George Armstrong's sentiment that the only good Indian is a dead Indian." He went on to say that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. The purpose of Indian boarding schools was to kill the Indian to save the man. This involved purging Indian children of their language, their culture, their family, and tribal connections, and make them into compliant workers to do menial work. In 1879, Pratt opened the first Indian industrial boarding school in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. More than 10,000 Native American children from 140 different tribes were taught at the Carlisle boarding school. Pratt's model caught on. In 1891, the US Congress passed a law making it mandatory for Indian children between the ages of 7 and 16 to attend an Indian boarding school. There were 367 Indian boarding schools across this country. By 1926, 83% of Indian children were in boarding schools. Reports of the brutal conditions at the schools resulted in some schools closing in the 1930s, but the last Indian residential school in the US remained open until 1996. What happened at these schools? Nick Miles shared some of his research notes with me. He states, Carlisle and other off-reservation boarding schools instituted their assault on Native cultural identity by first doing away with all the outward signs of tribal life that the children brought with them. Long braids were cut off. Children were made to wear standard uniforms and given new white names. Traditional foods were abandoned, forcing students to eat foods of the white society. Students were forbidden to speak their native languages, even to each other. He goes on, the Indian boarding schools taught history with a definite white bias. Columbus Day was heralded as a banner day in history and a benefit to their own Indian race's fortune, as only after Columbus discovered the Americas did Indians enter the stream of history. Thanksgiving was a holiday to celebrate good Indians, having aided the brave Pilgrim Fathers. On Memorial Day, some students at schools were made to decorate the graves of soldiers sent to kill their fathers. So I thank Nick for sharing that. This year, 2021, national newspapers finally started reporting on Indian boarding schools after remains of children were found buried in unidentified graves. Many children had died of malnutrition or diseases such as tuberculosis and measles. Many were also physically or sexually abused. Others died running away from the schools, trying to find their way home. In Nebraska, a descendant of an Indian boarding school there told the New York Times, quote, "This was a school to eradicate our culture. It was cultural genocide to destroy the Indian in the child. The children went to bed hungry and were very vulnerable. The school didn't want the children to be happy, nourished children. If you ran away, you were beaten. If you wet the bed, you were shamed." So, what is happening now? For generations, people have suffered in silence. But 2 decades ago, some descendants of boarding school students became determined to help their families and communities heal. One of them was Christine Dendisi McCleave of the Turtle Mountain Ojibwe, who formed the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition, called NABS, N-A-B-S for short. In the 1990s, Indigenous people in Canada initiated a truth process that led to a truth commission from 2008 to 2013, involving thousands and thousands of individual testimonies across the country. Some consented to making their testimonies public. Many found the process painful but healing. Lessons learned in Canada's truth process are helping here in this country. Today in the US, steps towards a truth and healing process are moving forward. In 2018, 2 Native American women were elected to the House of Representatives. Deb Haaland, who is Pueblo Laguna from New Mexico, and Sharice Davids, Ho-Chunk from New Mexico. This year, President Joe Biden tapped Deb Haaland to serve as Secretary of the Interior, the first Native American to be named to a cabinet position in this country. Interior Secretary Haaland has announced a nationwide investigation into Indian residential schools. Senator Elizabeth Warren introduced legislation to support this initiative into the Senate. And Representative Sharice Davids introduced similar legislation into the House of Representatives. This is legislation that we can build support for and try to get it passed into law. A few days ago, the National Native American Boarding School Healing Coalition held a 2-day virtual conference, which hundreds of us Zoomed into from our homes. Led by Christine Dindisi McCleve and other Native leaders, it involves ceremony, music, testimonies by elders, and a series of panels on building a truth and healing process in the United States. This is very good news for us to share and support. Thank you. I have flyers to pass out for you all that has the most important information here is the website of this boardingschoolhealing.org. So yeah. Oh yeah, okay, let me read it for people who are zoomed in here.
You can, I'm gonna send it to that team.
Oh, okay, so we will, it'll be in the chat for people watching. And I think it's an excellent organization. I just want to say that I'm really, I was thrilled by the conference and also by the kind of work that they're doing. And all those people that I mentioned, Deb Halen, Sharice Davids, they were all very much part of this whole struggle. And it's really great to see people working together from all over the country and drawing on lessons from Canada. It's also really great. So now we're gonna get Matoaka back up here. Matoaka is going to respond to this from her own experience. Her father was in an Indian residential school. So this is personal as well as very important. So
Thank you. Well, you know, some people, many people, all of us actually, we were taught in this American school system. And a lot of what we were taught was not true. And this idea, this subject of boarding schools, I have to admit, is painful for me. You know, people think that Native people are kind of sensitive. Yeah, we're sensitive because the travesties committed to Native people are still happening today, as is evidenced by all of the graves that were found up in Canada. And now there are going to be more investigations here in the United States. And as Sally said, my father was a boarding school Indian. And he never talked about it while we were growing up. I didn't learn about his experience until I had gone to college. And there I am in college studying the documented history of the United States. And I'm reading about all these treaties that were broken, all these massacres that happened. And to be honest, my head was spinning because I felt so betrayed and so lied to, not necessarily by my parents, because both of them experienced terrible things when it came to being a Native person back in the 30s and 40s. I should tell you that my dad was from a Pueblo in New Mexico called Santo Domingo, Pueblo, way back in the early part of the 1900s. The Pueblo has since chosen to name themselves their own name. And so now they're known as Kiwa. Pueblo. But that's where my dad was from. And as a child, he was rounded up, literally rounded up with other children, taken from his home and forced to go to Santa Fe Indian boarding school. And my father had never been on a train. He didn't know what a train was, but the kids were taken to a train. And because, Christianity had been established in the Pueblos since the Spaniards were in the area in the 1500s and the 1600s. And so he was familiar with some concepts of like heaven, and that kind of thing. So the only thing they were told and could kind of understand, because he didn't speak English, but they were told they were going to be taken to a wonderful place, a beautiful place. And so my father thought they were like going to heaven, And so when this train, the steam train, came along to take them away, my father, who had never seen a train before, thought it was this big black snake blowing smoke, and that it was coming to eat them up and take them to heaven. So you can imagine how terrified the children must have been. But they were herded onto the train. And then in the course of going to Santa Fe, my father had to do the pee-pee dance, He really had to go, and he didn't know how to tell the conductor what was going on. So he was there, doing that kind of dance. And finally, the conductor figured out what was going on, and he took my dad to the toilet that was on board. And my dad got in there very happy to know he could relieve himself, except he looked down and he saw this white porcelain bowl there. And he thought, wow, these white people are pretty smart. They bring their wells with them. And so, no, he didn't go in the well. I'm sure they weren't pleased with him afterwards, but that's a true story. That's a story that he told me. But when he went to school, it was the bad old days, and he had his hair cut. He was punished for speaking his own language. And he told me he failed kindergarten 5 times, which I kind of believe, really. And the first words he learned were damn fool, because that's what he was called a lot. And on Thursdays, he would run away, because Thursdays were bath days, and the children's skins would be scrubbed with brushes, and it was painful. So he'd run away on bath days and get caught and, have to come back. But I cannot believe how resilient my father is, and I am so grateful. He never forgot who he was, never. And when we were growing up, now my parents met in New York City. So I was born in New York City and raised in upstate New York, about 2 hours south of the Canadian border. But like I said, my dad had to learn to speak English. And we were the only Native people, the only people of color in this little small town where I grew up. And the reason that my family moved up from New York City to this area of the country was because we worked at a place called Frontier Town. And Frontier Town was a Western themed park. And the reason we moved up there was because we needed to eat and have a living. And so we were the native family at Frontier Town, which was like cowboys, Indians, shootouts, rodeos, and that kind of thing. Now, we moved up there when I was 4 years old. And my dad had taught us how to dance and how to follow songs and all of that since forever. And 3 times a day, my brother Powhatan and I, we would dance for the tourists who came. And now I have to say, we were not hokey. We were the only thing in Frontier Town that wasn't pretend, you know. But people had a hard time understanding that, you know. And so in order to make a living, this is what my father would do. And he ran the archery range, and my mother worked in an Indian shop, and my brother and I danced 3 times a day. But getting back to the idea of boarding school and the ramifications of that, my dad was doing what he needed to do, what he loved to do. He was a wonderful teacher, a wonderful native singer and dancer. And he taught us so that all of us could be together. A lot of families did not stay together. There was a lot of dysfunction that was built into the boarding school situation. That is why they took the children away, to take their most precious treasures away from them and break up a family unit, and then teach them in English, punish them for speaking their own language. And when they went home, sometimes they couldn't remember their own languages. And sometimes their parents, who finally understood that they would be punished for speaking their own language, they didn't want their children hurt. So they stopped speaking to them in their own language. And there was this awful silence, trying to help their children. And my father, as an adult, was so homesick for his people. And like I said, we lived in upstate New York. And there are reasons also that my dad was so lonely. It's because he could only go home once every year or 2 because it was so expensive. And the other reason was my mother. My mother was from a different tribe. She was Chickahominy. And when they married, well, they had met in New York, the rule was that my mother would have to go to New Mexico and learn all of the language that was able to be spoken there again, have to renounce her being Chickahominy, learn all his customs, all his ways. And for 6 years, she would have to be on probation. She would be watched to make sure she was doing the native things from that Pueblo. So again, getting back to the residential schools and families being torn apart, this was part of the plan. They wanted Native people to go away from reservations, especially in the early part of the 1900s. They even had a program to encourage Native people to go to the city and live in the city. And they didn't have support once they got to the city. And it was a whole other world, a whole other world. So there were a lot of suicides, a lot of cultural identity problems, education, not so good, because maybe when they finally got out of boarding school, they certainly were not up to par with other people who had graduated from school. Now, I love my dad dearly. I loved my dad so much, but he still couldn't spell my name. As an adult, he still couldn't spell my name, and I loved him for that, because he still loved me, and I couldn't speak his language. I don't speak my own language. I know many songs, many dances, but I don't speak my own language. And this is painful for me today, in this generation. It is painful, because when I go back to New Mexico, first of all, the people there call me, "Oh, you're the one who flew in from New York," you know? And they do give me some leeway, because Kiwa Pueblo is one of the most traditional pueblos now. But because I didn't grow up there, I can't participate in one of the most important dances there are. And this is heartbreaking to me. And this all goes back to why there are some Native people who are very, very closed to outsiders. Like if you go to the Pueblo and there's a dance, you are not allowed to record it, tape it, draw it, in any way make a copy of that experience. And that's because Native people were so exploited. But now, because I wasn't brought up there, now I can't dance on the very earth that my father danced on. And it breaks my heart. And part of why I don't speak my language is because there aren't enough Native people around from my dad's home who are in this area of the country. Ever since people were allowed off reservations, because at one time, as part of the policy of the government, Native people were not allowed to leave the reservation, even to hunt. And this is all part of taking away their spirit, the roles of the hunters and the warriors who are providers, the killing of the buffalo on the plains, and the boarding schools. It all ties together. And I have to read something to you. I have to read this. One of the things that happened at boarding schools was that the children were forced to participate in plays that exalted white heroes like Columbus. And so they would have to recite these things to entertain the white folks who came to see what a wonderful job the schools were doing to civilize these savages. So this is part of the play. The first figure to step forward is none other than Columbus. He describes the moment when land is first sighted. Then boomed the Pinto's signal gun. the first that ever broke the sleep of that new world, the sound echoing forest depths profound, a continent awoke. Captain John Smith comes forward then, Miles Standish and Priscilla Alden, next to John Eliot, the Puritan missionary, followed by George Washington. As these historical heroes, all of them white, make an appearance, each is given the badge of citizenship. The next to speak in Indian character, who pleads, "You have taken our river and fountains, the plains where we love to roam. Banish us to the mountains and the lonely wastes for home. Our clans that were strongest and bravest are broken and powerless through you. Let us join the great tribe of the white men as brothers dare to do." Indians were now willing to join the white man's march of progress. And still the ways of peace we would follow. Sow the seed and sheaves gather in. Share your labor, your learning, your worship, a life larger, better to win. Than foemen no longer, nor aliens, but brothers indeed we will be. And the sun find no citizens truer as he rolls the uttermost sea. Columbus replies by challenging the Indians to name the individuals of their race equal to those white heroes that had made me great and established my throne in the New World. One by one they come forth. There is Samoset who lines up. I said to my pale-faced brother, "Welcome, Englishmen." Then there is the chieftain who says to Washington, "We welcome you to our country." And an Indian convert recites a Bible verse in Algonquin. In the end, Columbia is convinced. She gazes upon a group of Indians dressed as farmers, teachers, and mechanics. Their plea for a place of honor and citizenship seems too reasonable to deny, and she says to her Indian wards, "You have gained your cause, your past." Your past, present, and your purposes for the future prove your right to share all I have to give. Take my banner and your place as my citizens. What arrogance and gall it took to write those words and demand that they be spoken by native tongues. How like salt ground into the wounds already inflicted on the native people, the idea that children were coerced to speak these words that reversed the truth is hard to imagine. Indian people were being told that they, in effect, had a right to share in what had belonged to their ancestors. The divinely driven concept of manifest destiny could be couched in no more descriptive words than that of Helen Ludlow. A lot of Native parents resisted having their children taken away. And at that time, particularly in the beginning when boarding schools came into being, they were punished. And they were punished, these parents who loved their children, by their rations being cut off. And their rations were not all that hot either, like lard and flour. I don't know, I think maybe the genes got kind of changed along the way because got a lot of overweight Native people, you know. I'm not trying to defend myself there, but, but we do like fry bread, okay. But anyway, boarding schools. Not only did they affect the people that went to them, but they affected their families. My father, and I love him dearly still, he passed away in 1981. He drank a lot. And he would say things when he was in that state like, I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna go home. And he meant by that going back to New Mexico. And I loved my dad dearly. And as a little child, I didn't understand that kind of loneliness. I didn't understand the kind of loneliness that happens when you don't see people who look like you and you were brought up every day with people who look like you and who danced and sang and observed ceremonies that made you the person you are. My father taught us the best that he could, but it's not the same as having a whole community of people that you can wake up to in the morning and know that when you sit down at breakfast, you'll probably get 6 or 7 or 8 people coming in to share the food because that's the custom. And sometimes he didn't know I was watching, but he would sit on the couch late at night and he would sing songs in his own language just so he wouldn't forget. And he would tape record these songs so he could hear his language back. And think about those children who went away and they couldn't sing or dance, those things that reinforce who we are. And singing and dancing is very important to Native people. That's how we learn our world view. And that's how we learn respect for our elders, for the animals, all the things in nature. That's how we do that. We learn through singing and dancing, through what we wear, through the instruments that we use. And to have that taken away is like to have somebody tear out your heart. And today, even my relations, my nieces, nephew, they know less than I know. And they come to me. Hopefully they come to me to learn. And I will teach them everything that I can. A lot of people come up to me and they want to know who they are, because the influence of boarding schools, and it was so painful for people that when they grew up and had children, they didn't even tell their children that they were Native. And so there are a lot of displaced Native people. And it's a sensitive subject. It's really, really sensitive subject. Because sometimes people, they're so desperate to learn about their Native heritage that they'll listen to like anybody who has any idea. And sometimes I have to say, some people have some kind of crazy ideas about what it is to be Native, but they learn these things. And so, and I've done a lot of work in schools, and there's a lot of ignorance that has been passed on, a lot of misinformation about Native people. And that was all part of the boarding school thing, all part of assimilating us so that we could be like the rest of society. I'll tell you a quick story. Okay, I do a lot of work in schools. I went into a kindergarten class one time. The children greeted me with 1 little, 2 little, 3 little Indians. They were sitting on the floor, cross-legged with their arms across their chests. They had been painted with lipstick. And they were wearing paper bag headbands with paper feathers. And I have to tell you, I was absolutely horrified when I walked in there that a teacher would do that. But you cannot take it out on the children because they're innocent. So what I did was I gritted my teeth inside and I smiled very lovingly, sincerely, and caringly at these children. And I said, "Hi, everybody," because they also greeted me with, "How?" So I just said, "Hi. Hey, would you like to know how to greet a native person in a good way so you could make a friend?" And they go, "Yeah." So I taught them how to say "Kuwatsina." And that means hello, how are you in my dad's language. How's my time?
It's 7 o'clock,
It's 7 o'clock.
so we can do some singing.
Okay,
Whatever.
all right. I don't know if I fulfilled your knowledge or brought you a little further along in terms of what you know about boarding schools, but I want to say that it is important to heal. It's important to heal from that part of our lives. And it is so good that there are tribal colleges that have been established, and they also have elders come in to help teach oral history, stories, which are so important to us. We learn a lot through stories. And a lot of times, I have to say this, I'm a storyteller. A lot of times people think that the stories that we tell are very simplistic, like how the chipmunk got its stripes, or one of my favorite stories is Rainbow Crow, which is a Lenape story. Those Rainbow Crow in particular is a really deep story. I told that story 7 times before I got it. And I said, wow, So I'm just telling you that whenever you hear stories of Native people, that's part of who we are. And we have many, many stories from many different tribes. But listen closely to them because you'll learn about us and our history and how we look at the world. And that's important because we have to keep that kind of thing going. That is part of our healing too. Okay, I'm going to ask Miss Sally, what would you like to do now? Would you like to do a little music with me?
Yes.
Yeah? I love the enthusiasm here. Wow, don't get me excited now because I will get carried away. Well, you know what? I think an easy song, well, I think it's easy, that I can do with you is a song that's called it's a stomp dance. And it's a call and response. We have so many different kinds of music. Oh, I could spend forever, but I won't. It's okay. And this song is from the Iroquois people. So when I do this song with you, I want you to have a lot of enthusiasm and a lot of gusto. A long time ago, this was a song that the warriors used to sing before they had to go out and take care of some business. But now it's a social dance, and men and women and children do it. Okay? So, call and response. It starts out with, I say, yo, yo, and you say, wee. Yo, yo, wee. Yo, yo, wee. Yo, yo, wee. And now it's the call and response part. I say, yo, oh, and you say, hey. Okay? Where's my rattle? Could you find my rattle in there, please? I'll say, yo ho, hey, yo ho, hey, yo oh, hey, yo ho, hey, way ha, 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 way ha. I'm going to use a horn rattle, very popular in the Northeast. Okay. And you can use the turtle rattle. Okay. So, if you want, you can stand up because you have been sitting, or you can sit, you can do whatever you like. Okay? And so now, this is to get up your enthusiasm because you've been listening to some pretty heavy stuff. So I want to like build up your spirit just a bit, okay? And you at home, I want to see you stand up and join in. I have very good vision. Okay, it starts out, yo, yo, wee! Yo, yo, wee! Yo, yo, wee! Okay. Yo, oh, hey. Yo, oh, hey. Yo, oh, hey. Yo, oh, hey. Way ha, 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 way ha. Oh, hey. Oh hey, 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 like a bully dog. Okay. Hey-o, 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 oh-heo, 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 oh-heo. Okay, now we're gonna do it for real. Now that was for real, I'm just kidding. But we're gonna get a little more oomphy, a little more peppy. And if you want, it is a stomp dance. And if you want, you can dance in place. Because I have this cord and we can't really dance around, unfortunately. But anyhow, here you go. It goes. This is.
We can solve it.
You can?
You dance, I'll follow you to court.
Oh, kind of like a little groupie. I love that. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm gonna start. Yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey. You can just join in after Sally. Yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo, hey. Way ha, way ha, way ha, way ha. Way ha, way ha, oh hey, 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 hail, 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 oh hail, oh hail. Oh, him. Oh, him. Oh, pretty good. Pretty good. There's only about 50, 60 verses, but we're not going to do that. We won't do that. Okay, it is now 10 after 7. We can do a lullaby for the children, and then we can do okay. Now in our hearts, we carry this respect for those little souls who didn't make it home from boarding school. And what I'd like to do with you now is let's do a lullaby for these children. And you can sing a chorus. This is a new part added to the song. This is a lullaby that my dad used to sing to us when we were kids. And like all kids, we never wanted to go to sleep, you know, because that's when all the good stuff happens. You know? So, he,
Or I can hold.
no, I'm going to use a rattle. Okay, but thank you. And so this song, like I said, was the thing that got us asleep. My dad would say to my brother and I, sweethearts, come. The ima sha. Say that. The ima. Isn't that beautiful? That's a loving way to call someone. The ima. The ima sha. That's like an endearment. The ima sha. The ima sha. Oh, I love you guys. Oh, that makes me feel so good. Okay. But that's not in the song, but that's okay. What happened? Oh, okay. We're still here. The banner's still here. That's okay. It's got a little relocation thing going on. Okay, so this song is called the Cloud Song. And what happens with clouds is when they tease each other, like friends or brothers and sisters, like my brother used to tease me mercilessly. But anyway, the Cloud Song, it's about when clouds tease each other, a beautiful thing happens. It rains. And especially in the Southwest, when it rains, it's a wonderful thing. Okay. And so I'm going to use my gourd rattle, which is the kind of rattle a lot of people in the Southwest use, to sing this song. Now, there's a chorus that is like the wind, because the wind comes into play here. And you get to sing this part, and you can even harmonize it, however many parts of harmony you like. Okay, it goes, ooh, 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 Now, you'll know when to sing because I'll point at you. And I have to tell you, it's impolite to point at the Pueblo. This is how they point. They say, gotta go over there. Gotta go over there. Gotta go way back there. So they point with their lips, but it's very hard to sing and point at the same time. So forgive me if I point at you, okay? Okay, here's the song. I'll point at you when it's time. I only want shakaraki. I only want shakaraki. I only want And to all the children, we are saying, have a beautiful journey and know that we are welcoming you home. We know that you went through a lot and we are loving you. Wherever you are, you will always be in our hearts and you will always give us strength. And we are grateful to you. Okay, now I think it's time. I think it's time for round dance. I can see you're all excited. I love that. Okay, now this is going to be the last dance and song that we're going to do together. And this is an important dance. And people think it's really simple because the steps are really simple. But the idea of doing round dance is not. And it's something to really kind of think about. We do this dance when we gather together so that we can all be together in a circle. No corners. Everybody is the same status. Nobody's better. Nobody is brighter. We all shine. Okay? And this is a dance that's done so that everybody can share in the good energy together. And it's a simple side step. So we're going to go counterclockwise, although Iroquois people, I learned, go. No, this is counter, right? And this is clockwise. Okay, I got corrected one time at a powwow by some Iroquois people. And I said, oh, okay. So anyway, if you want to join in, you can stand and kind of get in a circle here. And I want to talk a little bit about the importance of these circles. Now think about the children. Think about the children who weren't able to do this. And also think about the fact that a long time ago, Native people, they were desperate to think that the end had not come to them. And so they would do a round dance, and they called it a ghost dance.
Oh my.
And a man by the name of Wovoka talk to them about how if they did this dance, the buffalo would return. And their elders and those who had gone to the other side would return and all would be good again. And so they would kind of dance themselves into a frenzy with this kind of round dance. And the cavalry and the government did not like this at all because they thought it was an uprising. So they actually hurt these people for doing this dance. But today we do it to feel good and to be together. Okay, it's a simple sidestep. And let's see, which way do you want to go? I'll leave that to you. Or we could change and go both ways. Let's do it this way first, and then we'll do it the other way to, satisfy those other, the earth term people. Okay,
So should we hold the cord?
that would be lovely.
Since we're all gonna be moving the same direction.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. So the step is this: left together, left together, left together, left together. And I'm gonna kind of hang out in the middle so this cord doesn't hurt me.
If we put the cord in the middle, we should be okay.
If you put the cord in the middle, oh, what a good idea! You're so smart. I'm so glad you're here. Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna sing a song. Oh no, let's do it this way. This will be a simple round dance song, and we're gonna do vocables, and we're gonna do yo hey yo eh ha ha yeah. Okay, and I hope you heard that laughter in there. That means you're supposed to feel good and enthusiasm. Yo hey yo eh ha ha yeah. Yo hey yo eh ha ha yeah. My dad made up the song, by the way. Yo hey yo eh ha ha yeah. 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 Hey oh hi yeah. Hey oh ho ho. Now, people say that our vocables don't mean anything. And well, vocables, you folks use it a lot, like the farmer in the dell,
Yep.
Stuff like that. Or think about deck the halls. Think what deck the halls with boughs of holly would sound like without vocables in there. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. 'Tis the season to be jolly. So you need vocables.
Right.
You need them. We do vocables when you see fireworks. Ooh, that kind of thing. Now, with some native songs, when you hear the vocable, hi, that's an expression of surprise and wonder. When you hear, ah, it's about breath. It's about being amazed. Ah, and it's a good thing. And when you hear Wedo, it is about dance. Wedo is to dance. Yo is far away. So, yo, hey, yo, eh, ha, ha, yeah. It's like, we're gonna dance over there and we're gonna be really cool and happy, okay? Yo, hey, yo, eh, ha, ha, yeah. 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 I really would like my drum. Now, this is gonna be tricky, but.
You want to hold this? I can turn with you, or we can someone else.
Oh, this will be like real choreography here. Okay, All right, yeah, so we'll just,
We'll work together. Sounds good.
we're gonna look so weird. Okay, okay. Now this is a round dance beat. This is music 101. And it mimics how your body moves. It's like up and over, up and over, up and over, up and over. You're going down and under. Okay. Yo, hey, yo, hey, ha, ha, yeah. 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 Hey, oh, hi, hey, oh, oh, oh. Yo, hey, yo, hey, ha, ha, yeah. 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 Hey, oh, hi, hey, oh, oh, oh. Ho is another important word. Ho means wonderful and all good. So we just did a wonderful and all good thing. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Okay. Okay, that's it. Till we have the after party. Here you go. I'm gonna turn this back to you. Okay. Turn it
Do
back
we want
to
to take questions?
Sure.
So we're going to take questions. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat. I know there are some already there.
There's the chat.
I think there was one about, from Jill asked, what was the year your father was taken off to boarding school, if you know?
I think it might have been like 1918, maybe. My dad was born in 1911. I think so. But my brother has a book about Santa Fe Indian boarding school, and there's a picture of my father in that book. And as a person who was graduating in the first class of Santa Fe Indian boarding school. And I have to say, when I saw his picture there, first of all, I was surprised to see it there. But when I saw his picture, I just started crying. I started crying because I knew how lonely he had been, how sad he had been. And I was absolutely shocked to see his picture there. Anyhow, next question.
I see a book there of Jim Thorpe.
Oh,
Could you tell us about his experiences?
sure. Okay, you want me to hold it now? I can, okay. Yeah, I brought some different books here. This book about, I'm sorry, my back is too, I keep forgetting you're zooming, okay? Happy Zoomers. I brought this book. It's by Joe Bruchek, who's a dear friend of mine. And Joe used to come to our house a lot and talk to my mom and dad. And a quick aside, I have so many stories, but this is just a quick aside. Joe came to the house one time to talk to Dad, and he brought this beautiful African flute with him. It was carved, it was gorgeous. My father was also a flute player, a beautiful flute player, a native flute player. So Joe played this flute for my dad, and my dad said, so wonderful. You know, my people would really love to see this flute and would love to hear it. Would it be okay if the next time I go out home, can I show them this flute? And Joe Bruchak very graciously said, of course, Swift Eagle, of course. So my father went out to the Pueblo. He came back and I said, well, how was it? Did they like the flute? Oh, yes, sweetheart. They loved the flute. And I said, oh, where is it? And he said, oh, darling heart. Oh, sweetheart. I couldn't help it. The Flute Society really loved that flute. So I had to give it to them. I said, Dad, that wasn't your flute. He said, but sweetheart, they needed the flute. And so I had to give it to them. I said, oh, Dad, you're going to have to tell Joe. And he said, I will. So Joe came to see us. And I was just hanging around waiting for my father to break the news, you know. And they talked about lots of stuff. And I said, Dad. And then he said, well, Joe, my friend, he called everybody my friend. Joe, my friend, you know, they loved that flute at the Pueblo. The Flute Society loved that flute. And Dad, and I gave it to them. And Joe Bruchak, being the wonderful man he is, said, Swifty, they call him Swifty. Swifty, I'm honored that you gave the flute to them. Whew. Native customs, good for them. We do a lot of gift giving. So anyway, back to this book. Too many stories. This is Jim Thorpe, original All-American athlete. He was one of the greatest athletes this country has ever had. Won a lot of gold medals, which they took from him at one point because as part of his experience in boarding school, he was very good in athletics. He took on a position in a local baseball team and he got paid peanuts to do it. So the Olympic Committee decided that he was a professional player. So his family fought for years to get back his medals, and they finally gave him back his Olympic medals. Maybe 10 years ago, they gave it back to him. Good for him. But in this book, Jim Thorpe talks about his experiences at boarding school. And one of the things he said was how some parents, they couldn't speak English. So they had no idea what they had done, that somebody would come and take their children away. Why would they come and take their children away? They loved their children. And they took those children. And at the time, there were a lot of horse and wagons, right? The parents would follow those horse and wagons to wherever they were being taken. And they would camp outside of the fences that were around the boarding school grounds, just so that they could get a glimpse of their children every once in a while. that's the part of the book that I remember the most. His native name, the English interpretation of his name, was Bright Path. But this is a wonderful book that Joe wrote about Jim Thorpe. Great American hero and athlete. And I'm going to go through these books. Is that okay? Do we have time?
We have another question.
We
Oh.
have one more question.
Okay, another question.
This is from Evan Pritchard. Evan asks, did you ever have any contact with natives who became migrant farm workers in the Southwest, and what happened with their children?
No, is the quick answer to that. I haven't. Yeah. My relatives plant chili, but they stay at the Pueblo. Okay, anything else?
There's a question, if you, is there any recording of oral histories so that this generation of people past, we can still hear their stories firsthand, like Steven Spielberg did with Holocaust survivors?
Yes. We have a lot of outstanding storytellers. Johnny Moses is my favorite storyteller. He's from the Pacific Northwest, and he gave me permission to tell some of his stories, and I gave him permission to tell one of my stories. So that's what storytellers do. When you respect someone else, you ask them permission if you can tell their stories. Also, my dear dad, I don't know, how close do I get with this? Forgive the beat upness. I've used it. Yeah, that's my father. And this is an album that he made, maybe he started it in the 50s and finished it, I think, in the late 60s or 70s. But there's another album that he made. I'm doing this because on the cover, there's an eagle dancer. And I'm so used to dancing and moving around that I have to show you there's an eagle dancer on the front. And
we put that in the chat for them already.
Okay, good. It's in the chat there. Joe Bruchac is a wonderful storyteller, and I believe he has CDs out. There's Kay Olin, who's Mohawk. She's a wonderful storyteller. Let's see. Oh my goodness, there's Perry. Do you know who I'm talking about? Perry. His first name is Perry, but he is on Facebook, and he is an amazing storyteller. So there are a lot of storytellers out there. Maybe if you go on the internet and just Google native storytellers, you can find more. But storytelling is very, very much a part of our tradition and who we are. It really helps to build character. And a very important thing that people forget is it helps you learn how to listen. Because a lot of people have forgotten how to listen because they're so busy, as my friend from Ghana says, yama, 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 yama. But it's important to listen and not to step on each other's words. So, yes, please go on the internet, ask your librarian. There are wonderful books out about storytelling that have many wonderful lessons. Okay, another question?
I think Maxine was just Perry. We don't know Perry's last name. We can look for it.
Mm.
I believe it's, I'll say it's last name, but Brown, Perry Brown.
Perry Ground, I think that is his name. Perry Ground, yeah, I think that is his name. Also, Tom Porter, a Mohawk man, has written a couple of books about his life and things that his grandmother taught him. And he is a wonderful speaker, a wonderful human being, a leader, an educator. He is the director of Ganajo Halege, which is up near Fonda, New York. And it is a reestablished Mohawk settlement on original Mohawk land. And at Ganajo Halege, you can learn about Mohawk culture. You can also learn how to speak the Mohawk language. They have 3 weeks of intensive learning how to speak Mohawk. It's an organic farm. If you go up there, be prepared to help feed the horses and shovel and help out in the garden, things like that. And they also have an exchange program with colleges where college students can go there and learn about Haudenosaunee, Iroquois culture in exchange for doing work on the farm, helping with the plumbing, with the painting, all of those things. And they have really good food there too, you know. Iroquois corn soup, yes, it's good. Boiled bread, yes, it's very good. Okay, we'll move on. And let's see. Up in Greenfield Center, there's a place called Endakana. And Joe Bruchek's sons are running it now. And it's a very cool place to go if you want to learn how to make a shelter out of nothing in the woods. And also sometimes they bring in a wildcat and you can learn how to track. And at some point you wonder if who's doing the stalking. So it makes it kind of fun, you know. And other times they have native food and regular food for those of you who haven't acquired a taste for corn soup and stuff like that. Oh, but it's so good. Anyway, yeah. Oh, and I belong to I have to say, is that all right? I belong to the Thunderbird American Indian Dancers based in New York. And we are an organization that presents free workshops in Native music and dance and crafts at different times of the year. And we're having an auction on December 4th down at Theater for the New City. That's 10th Avenue, no, 10th Street and 1st Avenue. And we raise scholarship funds for Native students. That's one of our missions, aside from educating people about diverse Native cultures. And we've been around for a long time, very long. 5 minutes, or you're just waving.
No, I just want to tell people about the play that you're doing.
Oh, the play, yeah. I have the honor and privilege of being part of the only contemporary Native musical in the United States. And it's called Distant Thunder. And it was written by Sean and Lynn Taylor Corbett. Lynn Taylor Corbett was the choreographer for the movie Footloose, and she's a wonderful director. Sean is wonderfully talented also. This is a play about contemporary Native cultures and issues. It's set on the Blackfoot Reservation in Montana. And the plots and the subplots are so good. The people who are in this play, this is a for real musical. I mean, this is a full-blown musical. And so many talented people. I think there are about 18 people in the cast. And we're going to be performing Distant Thunder in Oklahoma City as part of the offerings of lyric theater there. And we're going to be performing at the new Native American Museum outside. And so in March, maybe the second week in March, we're going to be performing. And Distant Thunder has a Facebook site if you want to learn more about it. Thank you. Okay. Also, go to our website, ThunderbirdAmericanIndianDancers.org, to find out about our events. We're going to have 2 weekends of concerts in January. And they last like an hour and a half. And I must say, they're pretty good. Okay, am I done? Are we done? Any more questions?
I think it's the same. So.
Any more questions?
There were a couple of comments.
Sorry, what was that, Maxine?
There were a couple of comments. Iris had a comment about Orange Shirt Day.
Okay, yeah, I'll say those out loud. This is from Iris Marie Bloom.
Oh, yeah.
Iris says, on Orange Shirt Day or other times next year, are there other events planned in New York to commemorate the residential schools, heal the wounds / resist ongoing oppression? Part 2, has there been an event at the Carlisle Indian School? And thank you for this deep evening.
I think there have been events in New York already to honor and acknowledge the children. Maybe on that website, Sally knows about this wonderful website.
So I don't know personally right now of other events. I know we want to do more events locally. So any groups or people who want to invite us to, we'd like to continue doing this education. And I think, well, the website that I'm very fond of is the boardingschoolhealing.org, which is the one that's trying to pull together a truth and healing process in this country. But that doesn't really answer your question. So I think we, the two of us,
If they go to that site, they should find out. Also, maybe at powwows.com.
Yeah. Okay. Powwows.com. That would be a very good place to look. And I think that we can, as we hear about things, especially that are in this region, we can share those.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
We can.
JD's going to do one with Full Dutch Church.
Oh yeah. Well, there's gonna be some kind of program soon, I think.
Yes.
at Old Dutch Church here in Kingston that JD is having a meeting about. So we will, and we'll definitely on the NETOP, KETOP listserv, we can put that out. And hopefully the African Roots Library will also help share it. Right.
Yes.
And if you guys hear, people in the audience hear about anything, any kind of events or commemorations, let us know, because we want to support.
And by the way, I'm on Facebook, if anybody
There's
wants.
one more comment that says from Alan G. I don't remember, this was posted about 5 minutes ago, but Alan says, and Grandma said, Iroquois teaching as passed down through the oral tradition by Tom Porter,
Right.
Sako Kowiniawa,
Suga Guanungues.
Sokaganongwes,
Yes.
Bear Clown Elder of the Mohawk Nation,
Right.
2008 at, and then a website.
Good,
Mhm.
good.
Can I
And
just?
then-
Sure.
Also, a very, very important speech, prayer, way of thinking, Tom Porter on YouTube. He does the opening address, which is also called the Thanksgiving address. But listening to him, he says, neither of those things are exactly what it is, but it's an important way of expressing gratitude for our blessings together. It's a means of all of us thinking and being of one mind to express to the Creator that we are aware of how He has given us all of the earth and the herbs and the air, fire, water, animals, insects, fish, everything. That is a way of expressing it. It's a very, very beautiful address. And I say Thanksgiving address because it is about the giving of thanks. But if you can find that on YouTube, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And when people participate in this address together, it's a community event. And it's one of my favorite things in the whole world to participate in.
Just to add to that, that when we celebrate, ordinarily, the pandemic kind of has messed it up, but we have had public events at Seedsong Farm to celebrate the solstice, the equinox that happen 4 times a year. And, the first day of spring, the first day of summer, the first day of fall, and the first day of winter. And we always start that with the Thanksgiving address, actually, from the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquois. And we distribute little pieces of paper. There are like 18 or 20 different things to be thankful for. And people, we give those out at the beginning of our ceremonies, and each person will read one of them. And so 20 people will express different types of Thanksgiving. And it's beautiful. And so it is a tradition that we are carrying on here.
And that's the short version.
Right, exactly. And also it's what JD was doing a Muncie version of that to open this ceremony. And that's why we did it, was that's the traditional way of opening a ceremony or a program.
Lori says, I'm not sure about orange shirt, but Carlisle recently there was ceremony to return 10 children's remains. Kiernan says,
Oh, Kieran.
I was working on Rosebud, where some of the Lakota youth initiated the process to get those 10 children home. And then I have some church contacts near Carlisle interested in being more involved in truth and reconciliation efforts or pilgrimages.
Great, great.
And Allergy Sense.
Thank you, Karen.
Great.
That's great. Okay. Well, I think we should say thank you to African.
Zoomers, I'm going to,
Oh, wait,
why don't you unmute yourselves, Zoomers?
Oh, hold
And
on
I'll-
1 second. We're just gonna
Yeah.
say goodbye here, and then if everyone wants to say, or is there anything else? Do you want to add anything? Okay, so does everyone want to turn their camera on and wave goodbye, or say, or not?
Go into gallery view.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Great job.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much. I miss you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Now our minds are one.
So much.
Allie, thank you, JD.
Good job, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, JD, Matoaka, Sally.
Thank you.
Okay.
Goodbye, y'all.
Adios.
Sorry, wait.
Night.
Thanks, everyone.
There's someone.
Thank
about
you,
to-
Maxine. Thank you, Maxine.
Thank you,
Okay.
Maxine.
Thank you,
It was a
Maxine.
pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Thank you all. Blessings.